Mesopotamians were around the time of 4000 BC. They were the first to record long-term written records of their astronomical findings. They created ziggurats to observe the celestial bodies and their movements. Astronomers were the timekeepers of their community. Egyptians were around the same time as the Mesopotamians. They used astronomy more for practical use, like creating a calendar and aligning temples or monuments. Their views on the universe remained entirely mythological throughout their whole lifetime. Stonehenge was possibly built in 2800 BC. It is a prehistoric observatory located in England, Europe, and it is quite possibly an ancient burial ground. The Chinese were around 1200 BC. They recorded about 900 solar eclipses and 600 lunar eclipses. Thales lived from 624 BC to 546 BC. He was a part of a group of astronomers and predicted a solar eclipse. Pythagoras lived from 570 BC to 495 BC. He created a model that showed celestial bodies moved in a circle. The Babylonians were around 500 BC. They used long-term observations to see regularities and patterns of the moon and its planets. They believed in astronomy and that when stars and constellations were in the sky, it affected things on Earth. Aristotle was alive around 384 BC. He is known as the grandfather of science, and he believed that planets and stars were perfectly round, and that was taught for a very long time after he was alive. Aristarchus lived from 310 BC to 230 BC. He presented the first known model that placed the sun at the center of the known universe. Eratosthenes lived from 276 BC to 194 BC. He calculated the circumference of the Earth, the tilt of its axis, the distance from the sun to the Earth, and invented the early day map of the world. Hipparchus lived from 190 to 120 BC. He is one of the greatest astronomers. He gave positions of over 850 stars and divided them into brightness classes.
Many of the Mayan monuments and buildings were aligned to the position of sunrise and sunset at the equinoxes and solstices. The Mayan calendars kept track of the sun and the moon and the rising and setting of Venus. Ptolemy lived from about AD 90 to AD 168. He was a Greco-Egyptian writer of Alexandria. He was a mathematician, geographer, astronomer, and astrologer. He wrote Almagest, Geography, and Apotellesmatica. The Arabs and Muslims studied the sky so periodically while they prayed 5 times a day, and when certain stars were in the sky, they had annual festivals. Copernicus lived from 1473 to 1543 and identified the concept of a heliocentric solar system. This is where the sun is the center of the solar system and not the Earth. Brahe lived from 1546 to 1601. Known as the Great Observer, actively opposed the heliocentric model by Copernicus. Brahe built astronomical instruments to observe the skies and get the most accurate readings of the positions of the sun, moon, and planets. Galileo lived from 1564 to 1642. He created his own telescope and made important observations on the stars, moon, sun, and the planets. He observed that the planets, the sun, and the moon were not perfect spheres, and some stars could not be seen by the unaided eye. Kepler lived from 1571 to 1630. He was Brahe's colleague for the last 2 years of his life. He solved the problem of planetary motion. He created what are called Kepler's laws of planetary motion. Newton lived from 1643 to 1727. He developed the principles of modern physics, published Principia, which contains information on nearly all of science except the concept of energy. Edmund Halley lived from 1656 to 1742. He was an astronomer and mathematician who was the first to calculate the orbit of the comet, which was later named after him. Einstein lived from 1879 to 1955. He revised Newton's laws to make them more accurate and discovered the theory of relativity. Niels Bohr lived from 1885 to 1962. He was a philosopher and a promoter of scientific research who contributed to the understanding of atomic structure and quantum theory, for which he won the Nobel Prize in Physics. Wolfgang Pauli lived from 1900 to 1958. He was a theoretical physicist and a pioneer of quantum physics who discovered the exclusion principle, showing how atoms moved around the nucleus. Werner Heisenberg lived from 1901 to 1976. He was a German theoretical physicist who was a key creator of quantum mechanics, who created the uncertainty principle. Edwin Hubble lived from 1889 to 1953. He was an American astronomer who had a big role in the creation of extragalactic astronomy and found that the universe is expanding. George Lemaitre lived from 1894 to 1966. He was a Belgian cosmologist, Catholic priest, and he created the Big Bang Theory. Robert Oppenheimer lived from 1904 to 1967. He was an American theoretical physicist and the father of the atomic bomb, who contributed to neutron stars, black holes, quantum mechanics, quantum field theory, and the interactions of cosmic rays. Fred Hoyle lived from 1915 to 2001. He was an English astronomer who created the theory of stellar nucleosynthesis. He didn't agree with the Big Bang Theory and wrote science fiction. Penzias and Wilson were around the time 1965 and were credited for the discovery of cosmic microwave background radiation. On July 20, 1969, Armstrong and Aldrin were the first people to walk on the moon and together collected 47.5 pounds of lunar material.